Sweden's debate over whether to transfer JAS-39 Gripen fighter jets to Ukraine has become one of the most consequential defense discussions in the country in recent years. It is not a question driven by emotion or symbolism alone, but a complex strategic calculation that touches the core of Sweden's national security, its new role inside NATO, and the future direction of its defense industry. For a country that has long emphasized realism, preparedness, and autonomy, the Gripen question is ultimately about trade-offs rather than slogans. Since joining NATO, Sweden has entered a new strategic phase. The security guarantees of the alliance are real, but so are the responsibilities. Unlike larger NATO members with deep inventories and global force projection, Sweden's air power is built around a relatively small but highly optimized fleet designed first and foremost for national defense in the Baltic and Nordic region. Gripen is not merely a combat aircraft, it is the backbone of Sweden's air defense concept, optimized for dispersed operations, short runways, and rapid turnaround under wartime conditions. Any decision affecting this fleet inevitably raises questions about readiness at home. Public discussion in Sweden reflects this reality. The central issue is not whether Ukraine deserves support, which commands broad consensus, but how far Sweden can go without undermining its own security at a moment of heightened tension in Northern Europe. Russian military activity in the Baltic region has not diminished, and Swedish airspace remains a front line in terms of deterrence, surveillance, and reassurance. In this context, Gripen's daily operational role in air policing and quick reaction alert missions weighs heavily in the debate. Within the political and defense establishment, two broad lines of reasoning have emerged. Supporters of transferring Gripen to Ukraine argue that the aircraft is well suited to Ukrainian operational conditions. Its ability to operate from austere bases, its relatively modest logistical footprint, and its strong electronic warfare capabilities are frequently cited. From this perspective, providing Gripen would be a meaningful contribution to European security and would underline Sweden's seriousness as a NATO ally. There is also an implicit belief that active participation in Ukraine's long-term defense strengthens Sweden's strategic standing within the alliance. The more cautious camp does not reject these arguments outright, but focuses on capacity and timing. Sweden's Air Force is in the middle of a transition from Gripen C and D variants to the more advanced Gripen E. During such a transition, force availability is often at its most sensitive. Aircraft must be allocated to training, conversion, testing, and operational duties simultaneously. Removing a portion of the existing fleet before the new variant has fully reached operational maturity could create gaps that NATO commitments alone may not immediately fill. Financial considerations also play a role, though they are rarely framed in narrow budgetary terms. Transferring combat aircraft is not simply a matter of handing over airframes. Training pilots and ground crews, establishing maintenance chains, supplying spare parts, and integrating weapons and data links all represent long-term commitments. Even if external partners contribute funding, Sweden would still bear institutional and operational costs that extend well beyond the initial transfer decision. NATO integration adds another layer of complexity. Gripen, operating within the alliance framework, benefits from shared situational awareness, combined exercises, and coordinated planning. At the same time, NATO membership does not eliminate national responsibilities. Swedish air defense still depends on having sufficient aircraft available to respond independently in the early stages of any regional crisis. The alliance reinforces national defense, but it does not replace it. This balance is well understood by Swedish audiences, who tend to view NATO as a multiplier rather than a substitute. The industrial dimension of the Gripen debate is equally sensitive. Saab's success in exporting Gripen strengthens Sweden's defense industrial base, sustains high-skilled employment, and preserves national competence in advanced aerospace engineering. Some observers argue that a transfer to Ukraine could further demonstrate Gripen's relevance in modern high-intensity conflict, potentially supporting future exports. Others caution against conflating industrial opportunity with national security policy. For Sweden, the defense industry is a strategic asset, but it is not an end in itself. What distinguishes the Swedish discussion from similar debates elsewhere is its pragmatic tone. Rather than framing the issue as a binary choice, analysts increasingly focus on possible intermediate solutions. One option is to prioritize training Ukrainian personnel on Gripen systems without committing to immediate aircraft transfers. Another is a limited transfer coordinated with allies, accompanied by compensatory measures such as enhanced NATO air presence in the Nordic region. A third approach would involve a phased transfer aligned with the delivery schedule of Gripen E, minimizing the impact on Sweden's own readiness. Each of these paths carries advantages and risks. Training alone provides long-term value but limited short-term battlefield impact. A limited transfer demonstrates political resolve but may still strain resources. A phased approach reduces immediate risk but depends on industrial timelines that are not fully under Swedish control. The key point is that none of these options is cost-free, and Swedish audiences are acutely aware of this reality. At a deeper level, the Gripen debate reflects a broader question about Sweden's strategic identity in the coming decade. Is Sweden primarily a regional defense power focused on the Baltic and Arctic, or is it evolving into a more outward-looking security provider within NATO? The answer is unlikely to be absolute. Instead, Sweden appears to be navigating toward a hybrid role, maintaining strong national defense while contributing selectively to collective efforts where its capabilities add unique value. Gripen sits at the center of this balancing act. It embodies Sweden's tradition of technological self-reliance, but it also operates increasingly within multinational frameworks. Decisions about its use therefore resonate beyond the technical domain. They signal how Sweden interprets alliance solidarity, risk management, and long-term deterrence. For Swedish audiences, the most persuasive analyses are those that avoid moral grandstanding and focus on practical consequences. The question is not whether Sweden should support Ukraine, but how to do so in a way that strengthens, rather than weakens, overall security. Gripen's potential role in this equation remains open, contingent on political decisions, alliance coordination, and industrial capacity. Ultimately, the debate over Gripen and Ukraine is less about aircraft numbers than about strategic priorities. It is an early test of how Sweden exercises its new NATO membership under real pressure. The outcome will help define whether Sweden's approach to security remains anchored in cautious realism or shifts toward a more assertive posture within the alliance. Either way, the decision will shape Swedish defense thinking long after the immediate headlines fade.